Cars 3 sucks. The Cars movies are something of a work of art. Not because they're brilliant, but because the first movie is a beautifully coherent, well-made movie. The second one exists, and the third one was so close to being amazing, but now it just makes me angry.
Released on June 16th, 2017, Cars 3 was the final movie to be released for the franchise, and it was tasked with rewriting the perfect imperfections of Cars 2 and closing out Lighting McQueen's story.
I've noticed a lot of video essays talk about how this movie is alright, or that it's actually a solid conclusion to the franchise, and I have to just say, did we watch the same movie? Because this is not a solid final chapter to a beloved franchise.
And we're here to tell you why.
The first Cars movie is a personal favorite of ours. Not only does this movie evoke a sense of nostalgia and comfort, but it's also laced with beautifully authentic moments between characters, gorgeous animation, and easily has the best story among the three movies.
The anchor that holds together the entire movie altogether is Lightning's relationship with Doc Hudson, and that's what we want to approach this video's topic on. While the first movie highlights the flaws of both characters and shows their growth, the third movie tries to do something similar, utilizing Cruz as a stand-in for Lightning's character. While some moments work, they are ultimately not as refined as the first and completely hinder the rest of the movie for us. So come here, we're diving into the first film.
As I mentioned before, the story ultimately centers around the relationships built between Lightning and the other cars in Radiator Springs. How he goes from a self-centered, narcissistic race car to a genuine, empathetic, appreciative one. But how this movie goes about doing so is much more raw and realistic compared to how the third movie does it. The story is about racing, sure, but the main focus is around these relationships Lightning builds to free himself of his ego, which makes this film work so much more.
In the beginning of the film, within the first couple of minutes, we get an idea of who Lightning is and how he acts. He's brash, eccentric, and has quite a bit of an ego. When we see his introduction into Radiator Springs, we learn a lot about who he is in that moment. He thinks he can outsmart the cops and the people of the town by being charismatic, and when that doesn't faze Doc, we see how immature and brash Lightning is when he starts freaking out over the results of the car trial.
The immediate consequence of Lightning's destruction of Radiator Springs leads him to tar up the road. With that, Lightning needs to learn that his actions have consequences, and because of this, he must put others before himself, and he can't use his fame or notoriety to get out of his bad actions. It's what makes this film so good to us, that the writers are willing to have our main character be flawed and deal with his actions and grow over time. But this growth is centered around Lightning's relationship with Doc as the focal point. At first, Doc is portrayed as this mentor for the town. He's clearly the most respected of the bunch, and every car looks to him for leadership and guidance. So when his past life directly runs into his own town, a version of himself that he used to be in Lightning, he's caught off guard.
The trauma of his former racing career was never fully closed, so when he sees Lightning, he puts a lot of hatred into him early on. However, as Lightning grows and as Doc spends more time with him, he remembers the good parts of racing again and instills that hope that Lightning can do what he couldn't end, a racing career, in a way that wasn't exploitative by business owners and racing promoters. He wanted to go out on his own, but wasn't able to do that. Remember this line for the third film. When given the opportunity to race again for the Piston Cup at the end of the film, not only does Doc become Lightning's best supporter after realizing he needs to overcome his fears and experience life again, but Lightning shows his overall character growth by giving up the chance to win the Piston Cup and help King finish his last race before retirement, because he would never get that chance again.
This first film demonstrates the power of overcoming your preconceived notions of other people, letting go of your ego, even if it relates to a traumatic event in the past, because true growth will ultimately build your character into a stronger one. The first Cars is a movie with so much genuine heart and soul to it, with its script that many kids, including us, have been impacted by its story. Yes, the animation is beautiful and the jokes are funny.
Hey, McQueen, that must be really embarrassing, but I wouldn't worry about it, because I didn't do it!
But the underlying theme of overcoming ego and building relationships in unexpected locations is what keeps people resonating with the film to this day, which cannot be said about Cars 3.
This shit show. Okay, before I start, I want to point out that this movie isn't all that bad until the end. Overall, I think it's decent, but again, until the end. Let's first start with the beginning. I think they did a good job with the opening, but it didn't end up being as good as it could have been. They introduced funny characters, focus on racing, and most importantly, our beloved boy Lightning. But, there's a big but, it all happened so fast, and I don't even have any time to feel any sort of emotion. So I was going through this movie, soaking everything in. I can't even feel bad for the drivers being replaced. And it is a huge problem. Like, this is McQueen's life. Like, he cares about these people. They're his friends, but they come and go so fast for us, we don't even have a chance to care. Then we get to McQueen's losing arc with Jackson Storm. I just want to jump off the track for a minute and ask this question. Where the fuck did he come from? Was he made in the lab? Is he the car's Terminator? Why is he just so much better than everyone? If he's, as they say, a next-gen racer, why didn't any of the other cars upgrade? Why doesn't he race in a different class? He's clearly, even physically, different than all the other racers. Where are the rules? Regulations? Hello?
So Storm is kicking his ass, and everything is happening so fast that I can't even feel bad. If they made the opening slower and built on McQueen's racing career, it would have been much more impactful to see him slowly being taken over by Storm. Storm is just your generic bad guy. There's almost zero character development here. Then we have the crash. I'll give it to the creators of this film. This was a good scene, but everything after it was kind of a letdown. After the crash, Lightning finds out he has a new sponsor who built a whole facility for training. And McQueen didn't even know this. Lightning then learns he has 1 month to beat Storm and prove he deserves to race or he'll be forced to retire. And unlike Doc in the first movie, remember, we were going to come back to this, Lightning wants to be the one who decides when he can end his career.
He doesn't want corporate figureheads deciding it for him. So when he goes to this training facility, he meets up with his trainer, Cruz Ramirez. And this is where we wanted to see the growth, the maturity that McQueen gained in our first beloved film. But no, was I wrong. He straight up went back to square one, and it did not change a bit. Cars 1, he became likable, caring, empathetic, and not the asshole he once was. Cars 3 regresses him back to that point. He's impatient, egocentric, and arrogant. Like, I get it, you're hungry for revenge, but how about some patience? According to the internet, Cars 1 and 3 have 20 years between them. You have such a long career, and you haven't learned you can't make a change in one day? Okay, whatever. Fuck me, I guess. The worst part is that realistically, we all know that McQueen can never beat Storm or even come close to him. He's literally a different class. Like, he sweeps every single car by a landslide, and you expect an aged veteran to magically gain 100 horsepower. And then we get to the Demolition Derby scene. And dude, this was something else.
Here's where we learn a lot about our main characters' motivations and a lot about Cruz, Lightning's trainer. So far throughout the film, Cruz has been shown to be this lighthearted but kind of incompetent, next-gen focused trainer car. Lightning ends up training her more than she trains him throughout the film. So when we reach the Demolition Derby scene, a lot of conflict presents itself. So my man McQueen almost kicks rocks while fighting a very angry school bus. Why do school buses even exist in this world anyway? Disregarding that, Lightning was back on the quest of trying to get better at racing in his old school ways. So he decides to do the farthest thing from that by racing on a Demolition Derby instead of actually training on a track. But after doing the Demolition Derby and saving Cruz, getting his identity exposed, and almost dying again, he gets into a heated exchange with her, where the biggest revelation is had.
I've wanted to become a racer forever. Because of you.
So Cruz has always wanted to be a race car, and honestly, this scene is pretty great. The realization that Cruz was too afraid to show off her skills, the insecurity Lightning shows in not being able to race anymore, both of these internal conflicts showed their face, and it was nice to watch. However, it's the following scenes after this that pull the movie in a direction that bothers us the most.
After everything that happened at the Derby, McQueen finds himself finding the people that Doc trained with so they can magically make him faster. It's a good idea, but like, how does a race car with 140 horsepower from the 1950s going to teach a NASCAR how to beat a fucking missile on the track? The problem isn't McQueen's racing skill. He's by far the most skilled on the track, and that's a fact. But he's simply not powerful enough. We're given a montage to us watching Lightning train, become more aware of his speed, and building up his confidence for the season opener. But also hits us with a startling realization that Lightning is having a hard time accepting.
Yes! Whoa! Did you see that? That was incredible! Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Because it's the moment Lightning realizes that this new generation of cars will always be faster than him, no matter how hard he tries.
And that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with admitting defeat. That would have taught kids a valuable lesson that sometimes the only things you can control is how hard you've tried. This would have also been a great moment where Lightning ends his career in a moment that he wanted to. You know, like the whole point of the film. Plus, this also acknowledges Doc in the first movie. But no! He decided to do the most outlandish fuckery in the history of the Cars franchise by starting their ending race anyway. But no, he also pits halfway through the race and gives it to Cruz? I get the sentiment, but having Lightning give up mid-race is not as effective as if you were to gift the race in the beginning to Cruz.
Since Lightning started the race, it feels like he gives up instead of being content in ending his career. Not only this, but then he delivers the most outrageous fucking line in the franchise.
You said it yourself. This might be your last chance.
Which makes it my last chance to give you your first chance, Cruz.
What the fuck does that mean, McQueen? How about finishing the race and letting her do the next one? You can argue she wouldn't accept it, blah, 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 blah. But this just doesn't make sense as a line in general. First of all, McQueen's reputation will forever go down as the guy who pussied out of his last race because he couldn't do it himself. Second, how is this even allowed? Like, from a regulation standpoint, imagine you're in a go-kart race and you are losing because your go-kart sucks. So mid-match, you pit stop and you switch into a Formula 1 car and fucking fly through the competition.
Even if we put this aside, how the fuck does Cruz do so good anyway? Like, I get it, she's a coach. She knows everything about a car, but she's never raced, ever. She admitted that she was too scared to compete against other cars. As much as coaches know the ins and outs of their respective sport, that doesn't mean you see Bill Belichick whipping out a football and throwing it 50 yards. What does this say about the competition either? The only good driver is literally Storm and the rest are trash? Also, sorry, the ending move where Cruz ends up jumping over Storm like Doc did, this is just ludicrous. All she did was listen to a story from the older cars that trained Doc about a move Doc did back in the day when he was racing. And you're gonna tell me she visualized this shit and magically pulled it off? Listen, I don't think if I visualize myself parkouring over rooftops like Daredevil, I'll be able to go out tomorrow and jump off the Empire State Building without breaking all of my limbs. But I guess she's just built different.
Apparently, since Cruz was wearing the number 95, both her and Lightning won the race, which from a regulation standpoint makes no sense, but whatever. I guess the lesson is that it's always up to you when you want it to end, and that it's important to acknowledge when a new generation or successor can step up and fill your shoes. However, I feel this is represented better in the first film than in this one. And in the first one, we spend the entire time with Lightning as we see his flaws right away, and with the backdrop of Radiator Springs, he's forced to be secluded from his popularity and social capital. He needs to learn from the people he deems unworthy about kindness and empathy. His mentor, being Doc, is the perfect catalyst for the change in him. Doc makes him look like a fool. He outsmarts him in a race. He teaches him how the racing industry discriminates, how his life was turned upside down after the crash, and how this one moment made him disappear from the world entirely. It's a great dynamic because while Doc teaches Lightning how to deal with letting go of your ego and being open to teaching, Lightning makes Doc aware that hiding from the world and who you are is not good either. And the two of them grow by the end of the film.
In Cars 3 though, Lightning is fueled by ego for most of the film, and Cruz being delegated to a secondary character removes the time needed to expand her whole arc, which makes the final scene feel very unearned. Instead, Cruz should have made her appearance the moment Lightning crashes, with her being a stand-in for Lightning while he's recovering. Here we can see how, from Lightning's perspective, the industry discriminates against him like they did to Doc after his crash. With Cruz, it can be like a Creed situation, where Lightning starts coaching Cruz on how to navigate through the industry, teaching her to open up to the old ways of racing, since the old methods still work for next-gen cars. This would capture the same sentiment the Derby scene does, since Lightning's insecurity for not being able to race anymore comes to fruition, and Cruz's first season racing leaves her uncertain if she can do good as well. That way, by the end, when Lightning musters up the courage to admit his season is over and takes up coaching, it'll instill hope into Cruz that she can actually race and she'll be okay with him by her side. Obviously, this is just one idea, but with how the movie goes originally, the ending feels uneven to us. And many people can come away from the film with mixed motivations, and that sucks because the first film is genuinely so good, and for the most part, Cars 3 had the potential to recapture the heart of the first one if it tried. It was just caught up in trying to tell way too many stories. It couldn't focus on the one it needed to. Either focus on Lightning's inability to race or focus on his return to the sport, but when trying to do both, it lessened Cruz's character to almost nothing, and that's a damn shame. Overall, the Cars franchise is a mixed bag. While the first movie has a lot of heart and care in telling a dynamic story,
The third movie tries to recapture it in a way that doesn't work as well. And Cars 2, well, that shit slaps. But at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that Chick Hicks is a generational icon.
Hey, Lightning! Yo, McQueen! Seriously, that was some pretty darn nice racing out there. Fight me!
hey, if you like this video, please click that subscribe button. We have a surprise waiting for you if you do.
Do we?
No, but like, it would help a lot.
Also, kiss that like button, please, and leave a comment. Both mean a lot.